Laughter rolled across the private dining room the moment the CEO spoke. It wasn't warm laughter. It was the kind that fills space quickly, the kind people use to protect themselves. He leaned back in his chair, confident, relaxed, surrounded by executives who nodded at everything he said. His voice cut through the room, sharp and amused. "If you're so smart," he said, holding up the menu, "then translate this." The waiter froze for half a second. Not because she didn't understand the words, but because she understood the intention behind them. She had been moving quietly all evening, refilling glasses, clearing plates, staying invisible the way people expected her to. She was used to being overlooked. What she wasn't used to was being challenged like entertainment. She looked at the menu calmly. Her face didn't tighten. Her shoulders didn't slump. She didn't rush to respond. That pause unsettled him. He expected embarrassment. He expected her to laugh it off or apologize. Instead, she lifted her head and met his eyes. There was no anger there, just clarity. She began translating, smoothly, confidently, line by line, without hesitation. She didn't just convert the words. She explained their meaning, the tone, the cultural context behind the phrases. She pointed out where the menu's translation was inaccurate, gently correcting it like a teacher guiding a student. The room grew quiet. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. She switched languages effortlessly, demonstrating fluency that couldn't be faked. Then she added something unexpected. She referenced a phrase the CEO had used earlier in the evening, explaining its proper usage and why his version slightly missed the mark. Her voice remained respectful, steady, professional. She wasn't trying to win. She was simply telling the truth. The CEO's smile slowly disappeared. His confidence wavered. He asked where she learned all that, his tone no longer playful. She answered simply, years of study, long nights, choices that didn't need explaining. She hadn't mentioned her education because no one had asked, and because she didn't believe intelligence needed an announcement. No one laughed this time. The silence felt heavier, more honest. She closed the menu, placed it gently back on the table, and asked if there was anything else they needed. Then she walked away, not rushed, not proud, just composed. And behind her, a room full of powerful people sat quietly, forced to confront a truth they weren't prepared to see. The room didn't return to normal after she walked away. Conversations restarted, but they were thinner now, careful. The CEO stared at his glass longer than necessary, replaying the moment in his head. He told himself it didn't matter. One clever waiter didn't change anything. Yet something had shifted. He felt it in the way people avoided his eyes. A few minutes later, she returned with another round of drinks. Her posture was the same, calm, professional. No trace of triumph. That unsettled him more than if she had smiled. He cleared his throat and asked, louder than needed, how many languages she spoke. The table went quiet again. This time, no one laughed. She answered without hesitation. More than one. Less than some. Enough to do her job well. The simplicity of her response stripped the question of its power. One of the executives asked where she had studied. She named a university none of them expected, then another, overseas. The realization spread slowly. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't showing off. She was qualified. Someone joked that she was wasted waiting tables. She paused, just briefly, then replied that work was work, and dignity didn't disappear because of a uniform. Her words landed softly but stayed heavy. She reminded them that people choose jobs for many reasons, and none of those reasons define their intelligence. The CEO shifted in his seat. He had built his reputation on quick judgments, reading rooms, staying ahead. Yet he had missed her entirely. He tried to regain control with humor, but it fell flat. The room had changed sides without announcing it. As she walked away again, one executive quietly asked for her name. Another asked if she'd be willing to help with a translation project the company had been struggling with. She nodded politely, said she could discuss it after a shift. No excitement, no validation seeking, just professionalism. The CEO watched as respect followed her down the room. Not loud, not dramatic, earned. And for the first time that evening, he understood something uncomfortable. Authority doesn't come from where you sit. It comes from what you carry. And she carried something he hadn't recognized until it was too late. By the end of the evening, the CEO barely tasted his food. The room that once felt like his domain now felt unfamiliar. Every laugh sounded forced. Every compliment rang hollow. He watched the waiter move between tables, steady and composed, carrying herself the same way she had before the moment that changed everything. She hadn't grown louder. She hadn't claimed space. The space had simply made room for her. When the dinner wrapped up, he asked to speak with her privately. His tone was different now, quieter, careful. He told her he hadn't meant any harm, that it was just a joke. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded and said she understood. Then she added something he wasn't prepared for. Words have weight, she said, especially when spoken from a place of power. Not everyone gets to laugh them off. She thanked him for the conversation and reminded him she still had tables to serve. No anger, no lecture, just truth. That restraint stayed with him longer than any argument could have. He realized she wasn't there to correct him. She was there to respect herself. Days later, he couldn't stop thinking about her, about how quickly he had underestimated someone, about how easily the room had followed his lead. He began noticing how often intelligence went unheard because of uniforms, accents, or assumptions. It unsettled him, and once unsettled, he couldn't ignore it. When he reached out again, it wasn't with an offer meant to impress. It was a question. Would she consider consulting on a project that required precision, cultural understanding, and humility? She agreed, on one condition: that she would be judged by her work, not her title. In time, others noticed the shift in him. He listened more, spoke less, asked better questions, and every now and then, he caught himself remembering that night, not with embarrassment, but with gratitude, because the moment he tried to make someone feel small was the moment he was shown just how much he still had to learn.